Good evening, sisters and brothers. On behalf of my vice presidential running mate, Lamont Lilly, and our organization, Workers' World Party, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you for several minutes following the last presidential debate, which is actually still going on, not because this debate or the previous two debates had any kind of real substance to them, but to take advantage of these debates to reiterate some important points many of you already know. The racist, misogynist Donald Trump has claimed that the elections are rigged on behalf of the Democratic Party due to the large drop in his poll numbers based on the most recent scandal involving the shocking 2005 videotape once again exposing his nauseating degradation of women of all ages. To say that Trump is guilty of sexual assault is truly an understatement, along with his racist and fascistic views. Trump once again targets so-called, quote, illegal immigrants, end quote, as the root cause for voter fraud, along with African American voters, a growing number of them disenfranchised, along with other people of color. But let's be clear, voter fraud doesn't come from the people, but from the capitalist system itself. Workers' World Party does agree with Trump that these elections are rigged, but not for the same reasons he espouses. These elections are rigged on behalf of himself as a billionaire and the billionaire ruling class that he represents, just as these elections are rigged on behalf of Hillary Clinton and the billionaire class that she represents, especially her Wall Street backers and the Pentagon and its allies, especially NATO, that seek to enslave the workers and oppressed of the world, along with their resources, all for the sake of making profits. Just as the people of Libya and Honduras that have had their sovereignty violently stolen away from them, or in the process of being taken away from them when Clinton was Secretary of State. And now Clinton has her sights set on a possible war with the Putin government in Russia that is assisting in defending the Syrian government against U.S. NATO attacks. I guess that having a counter-revolution in the former Soviet Union was not enough for the ruling class. These elections, which Clinton claims to be fair and free, which they are not, are rigged to keep the ruling class parties, the Republicans and Democrats in power by giving the false notion that every 4 years these elections are all about defending democracy for the majority. But in reality, it is really a democracy for the super rich, a tiny minority. Obama, in answering Trump yesterday, stated, and I quote, "Trump's warnings could abrade faith in the U.S. political system. One way of weakening America and making it less great is if you start betraying those basic American traditions that have been bipartisan and have helped to hold together this democracy now for well over 2 centuries, end quote. How ironic and hypocritical for Obama to make such a statement, being the first black president out of all white male presidents for over 200 years, some of them being slave owners or members of the Klan. And also that during his 8 years being president, there have been more deportations of immigrants, at least 2 million of them, and more police murders of black, brown, and indigenous people than any other president, as well as mass shootings involving a growing number of alienated people. As Colin Kaepernick, the courageous quarterback, stated early on, and we concur, these debates are, quote, embarrassing, and boil down to Trump and Clinton trying to outdo themselves to appear less racist. Let's not forget that Clinton once called black youth, quote unquote, super predators, and Trump called for the death penalty for the Central Park Five. Black youth falsely accused of rape in the 1980s and have since been exonerated. And let's be clear that Clinton has never been a champion of women's rights. Yes, these elections are rigged against every person of color who is being targeted by police violence and mass incarceration, every worker fighting for a living wage and decent benefits, like the current heroic strike of the Harvard University dining services workers, the majority of them being immigrants, every woman facing humiliating objectification, every LGBTQ person facing bigotry like those in North Carolina under the heinous HB2 bill, every student facing tens of thousands of dollars in student debt, every family fighting for decent housing, medical care, education, fighting for clean water from Standing Rock, North Dakota to Flint, Michigan, fighting for healthy food and an end to climate change, occupation, and war. These important struggles and issues, and many more, are not being raised by either Trump or Clinton or the big business parties they represent, unless they are forced to talk about them. But these are the very issues that Workers' Well Party is raising, because we say that the entire capitalist system is rigged against workers and oppressed peoples here and around the world. We say that these elections are rigged against third-party candidates, be they Lamont Lilly and myself, Jill Stein, Gloria LaRiva, and others. Why are we being kept out of these debates? Why are we being silenced from raising issues that impact poor and working people everywhere to a broader audience? What are CNN, MSNBC, and the other big business networks so afraid of when it comes to revolutionary and progressive third-party candidates like Workers' Well Party having equal time in these debates? I think it is fairly obvious that the big business media is so afraid of letting millions of people hear a message of independent mass organizing and fight back. They are afraid of any third-party candidate sending a message loud and clear of not allowing our movements to be subservient to the Democratic Party, which sets back our movements as history has always shown. They're afraid of any third-party candidate that states loud and clear that the fight against racism and white supremacy is central to every single oppression in this country, as the Black Lives Matter movement and uprising has shown. And lastly, they're afraid of the clarion call for real solidarity with people who need it the most, especially those facing racist oppression because of who they are, be they Black, brown, indigenous, Muslim, Arab, Asian, immigrant, and many more. Lastly, I want to raise the current economic crisis with the political crisis which connects all of these issues. There was a poll taken in October 2015 by Marketplace that claims to have taken the first nationwide economic survey, stating that 39% of, quote, Americans are losing sleep over their finances. Of course, we have to assume that this number is much, much higher, since you can be certain that undocumented workers and millions of disenfranchised people, including low-wage workers, were not counted. The poll went on to say that, quote, more Americans are increasingly worried about losing their jobs, the ability to pay their mortgage or rent, and saving for retirement. 30% of Americans are very fearful that they will lose their job in the next 6 months, up from 10% a year ago, end quote. Sisters and brothers, the permanency of this worldwide economic crisis is at the heart of the police war on Black and brown people, who are becoming more and more expendable under capitalism because there are fewer and fewer jobs being created, along with massive cutbacks in services, which will certainly lead to more and more alienation and suffering. Our youth want to be unionized, not brutalized by police terror. There's a lot more to say about the economic crisis, which will become even more devastating following the elections on a worldwide scale. All the signs are there. These are the very issues consciously not being raised by the Democrats and Republicans because they know that an even worse economic crisis is coming since the one in 2007, 2008. They know that capitalism is at a dead end and cannot be reformed, and so do we. This election, like all elections, boils down to which Democrat or Republican can best administer the capitalist state of making more acceptable deeper economic and political attacks on all workers, starting with the most oppressed. So sisters and brothers, I know that so many of us are just counting the days when this horrific sham of an election is over. But the work will just be beginning after the elections. It doesn't matter who gets into the White House because none of the growing dire conditions are going to fundamentally change for the better for the workers and oppressed here and worldwide. We must take our organizing and mobilizing to an even higher level. We not only must be ready to defend any spontaneous rebellions sparked by police murders, just as we have done in Charlotte, Baltimore, or Milwaukee, but we must also go on the offensive to unite as many forces as we can, regardless of any political differences and geography, to fight for principles of unity on an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist basis. That is the role of a party that is fighting for revolutionary socialism to rid this earth of institutionalized racism, sexism, LGBTQ oppression, and all forms of inequality in order to meet all human needs. This message will be a major theme of our upcoming Workers' World Party Conference, November 11th through the 13th, at the Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz Center in New York City, because we know in our bones and from our history that you can't vote away racism, you can't vote away war, you can't vote away any form of inequality. However, you can vote for our candidates by ballot in New Jersey, Wisconsin, Utah, and on many state write-in campaigns, along with online petitions, because our campaign is a protest campaign against the entire rotten capitalist system. So go to workers.org/WWP for more information. So thank you for your time this evening in answering these debates, and I especially want to thank all of our supporters on social media and in the streets for showing our campaign so much love and so much energy. Black Lives Matter, down with the capitalist system, long live international solidarity. Thank you.